Why should you listen to my video speech? I will provide you with the wider context you place your building in. I will talk about cities, city regions, but also areas and sites with their specific policies and initiatives to become more sustainable. I'm Matthias Thoma, CEO of EBP. EBP is an international consulting and engineering firm placed in many locations around the world. In South America, we are present in Brazil and Chile. I have my background in urban planning and engineering. I studied at ETH in Zurich, the London School of Economics in London, and at the Harvard Business School in Boston. So I call my speech today, my keynote, Sustainability in the Urban Context, Challenges and Strategies in the 21st Century. I will structure the keynote in 5 topics. First, city regions. Are they a threat or an opportunity for sustainability? Second, I will look at key challenges regarding spatial sustainability. Third, we're going to look at potential policies and initiatives of city regions. 4, we're going to dive into areas and sites. What are best practices if we look at the neighborhood level? And finally, what can you do as planner or developer of a building or an urban area? So for the first chapter, I just want to start with saying we live in the urban age, meaning the world is predominantly urban today. What does that mean for us? For us as architects, developers, planners, we should always consider what we do in an urban context. And an urban context is usually influenced by many different factors, socially, economically, and ecologically changing conditions. Especially in dynamic countries, we also have to take into account that the urban fabric is constantly changing and providing new challenges. So if we look into the statistics, we can clearly see that since 2007, the world is predominantly urban, meaning that the share of the population living in urban areas is larger than in rural areas. And if we look ahead to 2050, we can see that at the level of the national territories, almost every country in the world is predominantly urban. That's not the case today, and these ratios differ a lot between different countries. But if the forecast by the United Nations is right, we will be a really urban society on this planet in 2050. If we look at this urbanization process, we should also look at the spatial structures behind this urbanization process. So first, we're gonna tell here this story of the city as an egg. If you think of cities in the ancient times, you can imagine these cities as a boiled egg. So everything was clearly defined with a wall around a clear urban core. Then between the 17th and the 19th century, we could think of cities as a fried egg. So a clearly defined urban core again, but some clearly defined suburbs around this urban core. And if we are thinking of the modern city, we can clearly see that we have kind of a scrambled egg. So a big mess, you could say, with subcenters, with undefined areas, with intermediate spaces. And so these cities and city regions are shaping the modernity of cities. Behind that are 2 confronting theories. One theory is the spiky theory. Richard Florida published a book in 2005, a famous urban researcher, and he said the world is spiky. So we're going to see many Hong Kongs in this world in the future. And confronting this theory was Thomas Freeman in the same year, and he said the world is flat. You're going to see more of Los Angeles types of developments. And these confronting theories, they of course have both some truth in it. And if we look at this in a more structured way, we can say we have centripetal forces in place and centrifugal forces in place. And centripetal forces, so agglomeration forces, are of course factors such as the connection of economic activities. So for example, suppliers and providers of certain products and services, they tend to be close to each other to benefit from their specific knowledge. And then another factor is the density of an urban labor pool. So people tend to move closely together to certain companies. And so, for example, if one accounting firm looks for a qualified staff member, then it's good if this company can hire it at the company next door. So this density of urban labor pool also is a force bringing companies together, bringing people together. Then we have mobility costs, meaning that in the urban environment, when you don't have to commute for hours to reach your job and go home after your work day, that mobility cost is lower. And so this is also a factor bringing people together. And then there are more the soft factors such as an urban lifestyle, culture, entertainment, people like social interaction. These are other reasons why people moving into cities and enjoy a dense urban life. On the other hand, we have these dispersion forces. We all are aware these days of really high land values, and what comes with these high land values are, of course, very high housing prices. And this factor pushes people out of denser urban areas, out of the cities, and this is a major dispersion force today. What we also can observe that, of course, we have external costs in urban centers, such as environmental pollution or congestions on the roads, and that's another important aspect of people moving out of denser urban areas. And last but not least, we still have the rural ideal as an imagination of our life, having a house, having a garden, having a car. And during the last 2 years, this factor again became more important because people wanted to distance themselves during the pandemic and enjoy some more privacy. So we also saw that we have a slight shift out of the denser urban areas into more rural areas. So if we look at regions in the world where the dispersion forces dominate somehow, these agglomeration forces, what we can observe then is the curse of urban sprawl. And Los Angeles, what you see on this picture, is of course the major example for extensive urban sprawl. And what comes with urban sprawl are exceptionally long transport distances and dependencies on the private car. Along with this, we have congestion, pollution, high CO2 emissions with social and individual costs. And then we, of course, have to build up really large infrastructure networks, and this, of course, causes investment costs and maintenance costs. We also lose land, valuable land, open landscape and fertile soil due to this extensive form of land use. And we also have monofunctional housing areas, which are somewhat dead during the day when people move out of these housing areas. Of course, that also changed a bit during COVID with the whole remote work setting, but still the main factors of urban sprawl are still there, and I'm really convinced that some form of commuting then will shape again these cities, and then the problems associated with urban sprawl will again shape our cities. So summarizing, we may ask the question, are city regions an obstacle to sustainable development? Because if you look at the statistics, you can see 70% of greenhouse gas emissions, 60% of global energy consumption, 70% of global waste, but only 2% of the Earth's surface. So city regions seem to be one key factor regarding environmental degradation and environmental problems. However, city regions are also very important drivers of wealth and social opportunities. Cities are responsible for cultural innovations, economic innovations, but also innovations which in the end benefit to society and the planet. And cities potentially represent an eco-efficient form of land use, not the example of Los Angeles, but other examples where you have dense built-up areas which do not take a lot of valuable land. In these cases, we also have an eco-efficient form of land use. So I would argue the city regions are actually the key to our sustainable future, because we see many challenges in the city regions regarding sustainability. At the same time, many opportunities, innovations, and a potential way forward if we look at the huge share of the urban population nowadays. And now moving to the second chapter. What are typical challenges in city regions today, and if we look in the upcoming decades? So what I use here is the framework of sustainability according to the Brundtland definition, with the social, the environmental, and the economic dimension. And I tried to really put in some key issues here regarding spatial sustainability in all these dimensions, and I will cover some of these during the next minutes. If we look at the social sphere, of course, social segregation, inequality, and in relation to that, the affordability of housing, that's a key cluster of challenges we are facing in many city regions. Migration is also always an opportunity and has always been a big opportunity for cities. At the same time, you can see also really challenges of integration related to strong migrational tendencies around the world. If we look at the environmental sphere, we can of course see climate change as a key issue here, air pollution, water as keywords here, and then of course, as we have seen in the example of LA, the loss of fertile soil and open landscape. In the economic sphere, we can clearly see a limitation of financial resources. That's always the case for investments, for building up the needed infrastructure. And then cities and city regions, they are still in territorial competition. All the cities want to attract talents, want to attract firms, capital. And another factor we have seen during the last 2 years, during the pandemic, very strongly are supply chain dependencies. We have seen some cities struggling because they couldn't get the products needed to live their daily life. So I'll start with the environmental sphere, climate change. What you can see here in this graph is the total share of buildings and construction activities of global final energy and energy-related CO2 emissions. So basically in both dimensions, so energy and emissions, the building and construction sphere accounts for around 40% of the total of these areas. So we really must think of influencing the built environment, our buildings, our construction activities, if we want to move forward regarding climate change. At the same time, cities are really vulnerable and exposed to natural risks. So what you see here are major cities, often at the coast, exposed, for example, to floods. So cities, again, on the one hand, they are big polluters, and on the other hand, they are big risk takers. So they have a clear interest to shape a sustainable and a low carbon future. In the economic sphere, as I mentioned before, we see territorial competition, an attraction of talents, an attraction of capital and good ideas for the way forward. Some decades ago, this has always been seen as something conflicting to the environmental sphere, maybe something which comes along with a certain trade-off. Clearly today, I see it as a true synergy between the environmental factors and the economic dimensions here. So developing clean tech industries, attracting talents who develop innovative ideas for environmental progress. That's really, these are opportunities for cities to bring their locations forward. Last but not least, as I mentioned before, it's social segregation, social inequality. these topics are key today to many cities. Rising house prices, migration, larger distances with city regions. All these driving forces come into play here, and cities are really challenged with these tendencies. And why do I really address this here very briefly? I believe if we want to go forward with topics such as climate change, and we really design sustainable buildings, we should always take into account the social dimension of it. So if these sustainable buildings are just unaffordable, then maybe these solutions are not ready for the mass market. I start into the third chapter now, addressing potential policies and initiatives of cities and city regions. To start with that, you can look into the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and you basically see in the chapter 11, which is titled Sustainable Cities and Communities, many topics cities should address. You have ideas here of affordable housing, of course, of reducing the environmental impact. You have the cultural and natural heritage, which is addressed here. So this gives you a very good starting point to potentially design what I would call your local strategy. Looking at an example here, Tokyo has developed a sustainability action plan. So they've chosen here the name of an action plan related to sustainability. Maybe you would call it a vision or a strategy for your city. Whatever term you use, I think it's impressive what Tokyo has done, and it's worth looking at it. So Tokyo, just remind you of that, is still the largest metropolitan area worldwide with 38 million inhabitants. So what they try to do here is really a holistic approach to the development of the metropolitan region of Tokyo. They cover the environmental sphere, the economic sphere, and the social sphere, and they see also city planning, as is shown here on the slide, as a key instrument for human-centered and eco-friendly development. So really worth looking at that of the Japanese major metropolitan area. What has become really important, of course, in the last years are net zero strategies or concepts for low carbon city, as it is called here on the slide. Depending where you are as a city, maybe you use the term net zero if it's achievable in a certain timeline. If you have to be realistic and want to achieve something in the next years, then maybe you use low carbon. I think that doesn't really matter. What matters is what are you trying to achieve and what actions are you really implementing. What I try to show here is that a low-carbon city has basically 5 pillars. And 2 of these 5 pillars, spatial structure and urban land use, are closely related to regional and urban planning activities. Then you have the energy pillar, so energy supply. Are you doing that with renewables or other forms of energy? And then transportation, of course, plays a key role. Urban mobility, how is that organized? What kind of emissions are you creating? And then last but not least, waste and wastewater management. I will now, in the following slides, just highlight some of these pillars and some ideas of what you can really do within these 5 pillars. Before I do that, very briefly, one thought. I believe it's really in the self-interest of cities and city regions to move forward, to become low carbon, to become net zero, because that's also a factor of increasing your quality of life. Because, for example, if you plant trees, that's good to fight global warming, but it's also good for your quality of life and adaptation to climate change. Less energy also reduces your costs as a city as a whole. It strengthens competitiveness Maybe you don't need as much as infrastructure as Los Angeles, and so that's also a factor in your overall budgeting and where you can really invest. And of course, besides helping your city region develop in with a high quality of life and reduce costs, you contribute to the global agenda to fight climate change. So what you see here is an example in relation to the energy pillar. It's the Energy City Program. The Energy City Program was initiated and financed by the Swiss government, and EVP was happy to play a role in managing and developing that program in several countries: Chile, Colombia, Serbia, Albania. And up to now, 1,500 cities in 20 countries are committed to the Energy City Program, which tries to really increase the share of renewable energies for heat, electricity, and fuel production, and also increase the energy efficiency in the areas of administration, businesses, and households. The program, and here is an example from Chile, then has of course different components, as you can see in the slide, components related to urban planning. Then you have the energy efficiency issue in the building and infrastructure sphere, the renewable energy and waste management topic. Then, as I mentioned before, urban mobility as a key issue. Beside that, we have more institutional components, for example, organization and finance. How do you organize the implementation of all actions? How are these actions financed? And of course, the communication and management of alliances in the implementation process. One pillar was called spatial structure, and the question here is, so what model at the level of a city region supports low carbon the most? Is it the monocentric city? Is it a more polycentric approach with satellite centers, which then the commuting is again to the center of the city region? Or is it more somewhat a network city where you have different sub-centers? And the network city is of course a form which has become more important across the globe. And what you can observe really is that you have different functions in different sub-centers in these network cities. And of course, the transportation system is not organized in a central way, but more with also tangential connections within the city region. What is clear is that a high density in general and polycentricity is a good starting point for a low carbon city region, because it can be combined with an efficient public transportation system. If your egg is totally scrambled, that will be very hard to implement. So spatial structure is an important pillar of low carbon development. So high density and compact settlements, that's a key issue here, at nodes of public transportation. Also, an intelligent orientation and volume design of buildings is of course really key for a low carbon development. And also it facilitates the use of solar energy and provides shadow for windows. So really the volumetric design, the architects and the urban designers are really challenged. That's a key here regarding spatial structure and urban form. And last but not least, the heat island effect has to be taken into account. Cities are often warmer, and in some areas even warmer as the average of the city. So there we have to reduce soil sealing. We should provide green spaces, trees, water. If we look at the urban land use side, of course, the key for low carbon development is the proximity of work and life. It's not always possible to find a job opportunity just 15 minutes out of your house, but as a general direction, the proximity of work and life, of course, is desirable and reduces commuting and the emissions related to commuting. And then, of course, planners should make a meaningful selection of land use area. For example, if renewable energy resources are available in a certain land use area, that's beneficial to the strategy of low carbon development. If a certain area is just well connected to the public transportation system, again, that's beneficial for a low carbon development. And then, of course, in many land use regulations, you will find a definition of building standards in the planning documents. For example, regulations regarding energy efficient buildings or renewable energy use on rooftops. So the urban planners here really have an important role when it comes to low carbon development and net zero strategies of cities and city regions. Just as an example here, what came a bit famous in the last years is the 15-minute city concept. And this concept really looks at the neighborhood level and basically has the idea of integrating all aspects of urban living within a circle of 15 minutes. So the place where you live, the place where you work, then public spaces, food stores, retail stores, educational facilities, and of course access to important transport hubs. That's the basic idea behind it, and it should create self-sustained districts and also improve public health and supporting local businesses. Of course, this is also a metaphor and will not be applicable to in its pure form in many city regions, because the job market is organized in a different way. But as a general idea and a direction, I think it's really helpful to follow the idea of a 15-minute concept. It supports proximity, diversity, and density in your city. To conclude this, or to add to these initiatives and policies, I really want to briefly tackle housing policies, because there we really have key challenges, as I introduced in the beginning. And in general, you have two potential ways to support the affordability of housing. One is somewhat on the land use policy side, where you develop a general plan, you allow certain densities, you define the built-up area, and this has, of course, an impact on housing supply. And housing supply, again, has an impact on price. And then what became more important during the last years in many Western countries is a definition of a share of low-priced housing, for example, in zoning regulations. On the other hand, you have policies targeting the ownership model, very traditional social housing, of course, and then cooperatives became an important instrument of providing affordable housing. So cooperatives are not necessarily public sector organizations, they can be fully private. They maybe benefit from certain subsidies from the public sector, and cooperatives then try to come up with really affordable housing based on a non-profit model. I will later on show an example of a development which was initiated by a cooperative. And then, of course, you have private ownership based on price criteria. The public sector sometimes gives certain development rights to private owners, but they also ask for certain prices at the end of a development. So these are two ways to support here the housing market, to support affordability. What you see here is an example of the city of Frankfurt in Germany, where we worked together with the city to develop what they call an integrated urban development concept. And what you see on the slide are different areas where the city plans to intensify land use to really work on the supply side in the next years. Frankfurt, as many other cities in Europe, is affected by really high demand for housing and raising prices during the last 20 years. So the question is, where can we intensify the existing urban fabric, and do we have to access actually new developments, especially brownfield areas which are not used anymore? I will now very briefly introduce one example, what I would call a best practice. Of course, it's in a Western context, so not applicable all over the world, but still it gives maybe some good hints for the development of areas and sites. So we go a level deeper in the spatial scale, not at the building level, but at the level of a certain neighborhood. And this area is part of the city of Zurich, where a cooperative had the idea really to create not only a settlement or just a certain group of buildings, but they really had the ambition to create a functioning, diverse, eco-friendly neighborhood, which is also sustainable in the economic and financial sense. And I really believe they did an amazing job, and if you ever make it to Switzerland in the future, go and visit this development. They had some guiding principles. One key principle was the 2000 watt society in the sense of an environmentally sustainable site. They called their cooperative more than housing, indicating that they want to achieve more than just an area of flats and houses, and they based their development on a non-profit model, meaning that every household could buy a share of that cooperative, and then the cooperative runs based on a non-profit model, offering in the end affordable housing and affordable workspaces. So people also work within this development to some degree, and also, of course, external companies and self-employed work in this neighborhood. What they also try to do really is to promote personal initiative and self-organization. So in that sense, giving the opportunity that these families and the households, they organize themselves, create some community gatherings, offer certain services to each other, and it started really well. So in relation to the environmental dimension, as I said before, the use of energy was a key issue for this cooperative, and they certified the development as 2000 watt site. And 2000 watt is a label in Switzerland, and the idea is that you use a maximum of 2000 watt of continuous power per capita. And the strategy to reach this goal was in the field of efficiency, so use less energy for the same purpose, consistency, use renewables instead of non-renewables energy resources, and also use eco-friendly technologies. And then last but not least, efficiency. Use less for a better quality of life. Sometimes it's good to use less, and still you can maintain your life as you did before, or even better. Funny enough, this development, and they didn't have that in mind when they really started, got an award from the United Nations World Habitat in 2016. What did the jury really thought is innovative in this neighborhood development? They really were impressed by the environmental features of the development, which went beyond legal requirements. And then the low carbon living, which started already in 2016, and you could see that the energy use and the CO2 emissions are way below other comparable developments in Switzerland. And then it was also interesting how diverse the neighborhood started, with different cultural backgrounds, economic backgrounds, families, non-families, and last but not least, as it has to be the ambition of the cooperative, the whole model is really financially sustainable. The cooperative is able to invest again in this neighborhood if it needs to be invested. So I covered that very briefly, but you can see on the slide the link directing you to the jury report of the United Nations World Habitat Award, and there you can really access more information about this best practice example here. So now I come to the last part, to the conclusions. So you as architect, you as planner or real estate developer, what can you do? what can you do when you think of planning buildings or urban areas? So first, again, city regions are the key. You have the challenges in city regions, but you also have many opportunities to come up with solutions. And urbanization is a global phenomenon, and it's very likely to shape the world also in the next 30, 40, 50 years. And city regions, they hold the potential to really contribute to sustainable development. Local solutions are the key to achieve the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And third, the challenges are diverse, but similarities hold potential for learning and exchange internationally on different continents. I really believe we can learn from each other, of course. We have always to adapt our solutions to the local conditions. And I really want to motivate you, design the transformation. You are here really to implement this change. And I think it's important to always look at the connection between the physical structure, the design of a city, the technical aspects, with the social opportunities you give, the environmental progress, and the economic sustainability. So a building is not only a building, it provides, in the end, the social fabric, it provides a certain form of environmental progress, and it may support sustainable development also in the economic sense. If you look at cities and city regions and what they can do, I think it's key to have a strategic orientation, call it a vision, a strategy, and including, of course, an action plan with specific actions. Then you may have sectoral policies in the area of housing, regarding low carbon, and certain regulations. What you also should try to achieve are shining examples. So the example I gave you before, examples which show you can actually do it, you can actually make a difference. And then also I would try to highlight, because these kind of topics always come together with regulations, you should also give room for innovation, to try things out, to let people organize themselves, let companies make their efforts to become more sustainable and to contribute to their urban environment, and also support private initiatives. And last but not least, what you're doing now, listening to a video speech and try to gain some further education and knowledge. I think education and the professional culture is key when it comes to the development of city regions. The further development of our educational institutions and exchange in the professional sphere is key if we really want to have an impact. So what you do now if you plan a building, I would just say, and that's the key message of my video speech today, take into account the wider context. Look for synergies. Sustainable buildings should also be for the benefit of our urban communities. Think of that if you plan a specific building. And now I leave you with a final thought. We can name culture versus nature as a certain conflict we are facing. If you take the 3 dimensions of the Brundtland definition and you combine society and economy, you could call it as an own cluster called culture. It's about civilization, about our socio-economic development, which is confronting nature. Well, in the end, and that's the key quote on the slide, humans are part of nature, not superior to it. Only when they understand this, there is a chance to survive. So in that sense, we are all nature, and I think we should all think in this way a bit about our built environment. Thank you very much for your attention. Please feel free to contact me directly if you want to discuss an issue or if you want to have more information. Happy to learn from the exchange with you, and I hope also in some form we can interact during this program. Thank you very much.